Hey, how's it going? Today I'm talking about going from the half marathon at Marathon Weekend in January to the Princess Half Marathon.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone RunDisney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
Okay, so you ran the half marathon at Marathon Weekend. Great job, congratulations. But the next task is making sure you recover enough and be able to train and cross the finish line at the half marathon over Princess Weekend. So there are specific things that you should be doing, and I'm going to outline them here today for you so that you don't make the same mistake I've had clients make in the past before we started working together, where they did nothing after Marathon Weekend and then just threw together a 9-mile run the week before Princess and barely survived Princess. I don't want that to happen to you, and that's why I'm going to outline what you need to do today. So when we are going from one race to the next in a single race season, and there's not enough time to go through the entire training plan again, you don't need to, but you do need to do something. You can't just sit around and hope for the best for the next race. So what we're going to outline today, there are three main elements. So you have rest and recovery, running or training, and taper. So you want to include all of those phases in these next, it's about 6 weeks between Marathon Weekend to Princess Weekend, okay? So you have 2 weeks of rest and recovery, you have 3 weeks of training, and you have 2 weeks of your taper phase, okay? So what you'll do is as soon as you are done with your half marathon, of course, you will do your recovery day of the half marathon, but then starting on the Monday after Marathon Weekend, you're getting into gentle movement. So rest and recovery phase is resting enough and recovering enough. And if you've been in my world for any length of time, you know I am not a big fan of complete rest. Yes, there are times where complete rest is completely necessary, but those are few and far between, okay? 80% of people who are training for a race and have just finished a race, actually it's probably closer to 85 or 90%, as long as they're feeling okay, maybe some soreness, maybe a little aches and pains. You just ran a race. You can't expect to have absolutely no soreness, no aches or pains. If you do, let me know. I want to know your secret. But you want active rest. So you want some movement in those first 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days. On my training plans, I make it 14 days. You want some active rest. So you're walking, you're cross training, and then by that second Thursday, you're getting back into running. You're doing easy 30-minute training, okay? 30-minute running. Doing it this way, 90% of runners going from one half marathon to another half marathon, they are ready to get back into running by that Thursday. That's why it's marked on that day to make that your first run. It's an easy, long pace, easy run pace, 30 minutes. Okay. After those 2 weeks of rest and recovery, then we're getting into the training phase. So the training phase is where your primary focus is running and cross training, keeping up that endurance. Now, notice I said keeping up. You're not building because you already built it leading up to Marathon Weekend. Now we're just maintaining it. So this will include your long runs where you're increasing mileage. I make it on Sunday. And then you are doing your maintenance runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those maintenance runs are shorter and they are speed work, tempo work, hills, things like that. And in those 3 weeks, you are building 3 miles, 6 miles, 8 miles long run. That 8-mile long run is way different from other training plans. So typically for a half marathon, for my training plans, you know I build up to 10 miles. Well, you don't need to build up to that 10 miles again. You've already done it. You did it for Marathon Weekend. You are not losing stamina. You are not losing your endurance in the 2 weeks between marathon weekend and when you're starting to build back up on your long run. So you don't need more than 8 miles because you've already built that endurance. You are just maintaining that endurance. If you train too much, you risk burnout, you risk getting hurt, and you risk not having the energy to actually finish Princess Weekend. So you want to make sure that you train enough, but don't overdo it. That's why I cap it at 8 miles. Okay. So 3, 6, 8 miles for your long runs. You will notice, what about that 10% rule that I always talk about? Well, in this case, these are not new miles. So you don't have to follow the 10% rule. You followed the 10% rule leading up to marathon weekend. You don't need to follow that now. The 3, 6, and 8 mile run, I find that that 8 mile run is a real turning point for people. If they can do 8 miles, no problem. They can do the half marathon, no problem. Now, of course, this does not negate a standard training plan leading up to races, but you've already done the standard training plan. So we don't need to worry about getting higher miles for this next half marathon. So you do 3, 6, 8 miles. The 8 miler is the end of the training phase. That is now beginning of the taper phase. Once you hit that peak mileage, now you're tapering for race day. So it's 2 weeks leading up to that half marathon on Princess. And these are easy peasy, keeping everything loose and ready for race day. You want to build up and keep storing your energy so that you have energy for race day. You don't want to overdo it and risk being burnt out and just exhausted going into race weekend. So use those 2 weeks to taper where you do easier miles, 30-minute runs in the middle of the week, and then bringing it down for your last long run on that Sunday before the half marathon. That will be a short, easy long run, and then a few walks and some rest days leading up to race day. You're also going to be doing your carb loading, but that's a conversation for another podcast. So when you're going from the half marathon in January at marathon weekend, going to Princess Half Marathon, you want to make sure that you rest and recover enough. And I find that sweet spot is really 10 to 14 days, making it simple math of 14 days on the training plan makes it easy to just look at that training plan, not be confused, and it's a nice solid 2 weeks. Then you train, you maintain your stamina with your 3, 6, and 8 mile runs, and then you taper. Build that energy, pull back that bow and arrow the right amount so you soar far and long, right? That's what Merida's arrow does. We don't want to overdo it and have it flop right in front of us. And we don't want to pull it back so far that it breaks and we can't go anywhere. You don't want to spend too long in that taper phase, just the sweet spot, just enough. Okay, balance out your rest and recovery so you've recovered enough, train enough, and taper enough so that you finish Princess Half Marathon with a smile, feeling strong, and feeling like you can do anything. Because you can.
Hey, can I ask a quick favor? If you're enjoying this podcast, would you take 20 seconds to leave a rating and review? Leaving a rating and a review helps other runners find this podcast because the platform you're listening to this on will start suggesting it to runners like you. All it takes is 20 seconds. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. As always, thanks so much for listening. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.